Tonight on NewsWatch, two massive marriage rulings from the Supreme Court, an extensive look at what it means for this biblical institution in America. Plus, one state's unique effort to help women in their choice for life and how it's influencing other states to do the same. And an emotional Paula Deen used a biblical teaching to address her critics on national television. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. The Supreme Court's ruling on the Defense of Marriage Act makes for a monumental day for the nation and for the first institution created by God. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin. With a 5-4 vote, America's High Court calls part of DOMA unconstitutional, a violation of equal protection rights. We have extensive coverage beginning with CBN's Paul Strand. He's at the Supreme Court with more on the ruling. Paul, it has been an emotional day for folks on both sides of the issue. What are you hearing?
Well, to everyone, it was a big day because of the Supreme Court killing DOMA, which basically defined marriage federally as between one man, one woman. The court said DOMA put a stigma on same-sex marriages made lawful by the unquestioned authority of the states. Now, the court did not make gay marriage a fundamental right, but in another ruling, by not taking up Proposition 8, California's ban on same-sex marriage, it basically lets California start to do gay marriages again. And the implications from these two rulings are huge, as both sides realize today. Gay individuals and groups, as well as their lawyers who fought against DOMA and Proposition 8, now say the next step is to battle nationwide for legalized same-sex marriage everywhere.
We cannot forget our LGBT brothers and sisters that are in states that still discriminate against them, and we will not allow it.
Within 5 years, we will bring marriage equality to all 50 states in this vast country.
With marriage equality back in California, 40% of the population of the United States is covered by marriage equality.
The lawyers battling Proposition 8 say it's effectively dead because the justices ruled those defending it had no standing to defend it.
They said the proponents have no concrete injury. They cannot point to anything that harms them because these two loving couples and couples like them throughout California are now going to be able to get married.
Those on the other side weren't necessarily admitting defeat on Prop 8. They say at most the High Court has thrown California and gay marriage into somewhat of a legal limbo.
We remain committed to the continued enforcement of Proposition 8 until there is a statewide order saying otherwise.
Even as it wiped DOMA out, the court specifically did not say states have to legalize gay marriage. But its two rulings are big boosts to the gay marriage momentum. Supporters of traditional marriage certainly have a beef with what the Supreme Court has done here. They're saying, how can 5 justices decide these crucial questions about marriage when the voters and the legislators in 38 states have decided differently? One of the biggest problems with gay marriage is that in most states where it's become legal, Christians who stand up too clearly for traditional marriage end up getting bashed, sometimes sued. Could that now happen nationwide with DOMA's defeat, especially with the way the justices denigrated opponents of gay marriage?
Now that the majority said that laws defining marriage between one man and one woman are not supported by any rational basis, that they are driven by either ignorance or hostility, I fear that we're going to see a flood of lawsuits where that'll be the lead for the plaintiffs right out at the gate.
Reverend Rob Schenck says believers need to get ready.
The script has already been written. Christians are angry, mean, bigoted, narrow-minded, ugly people. That's the stereotype. I think we have to do what we can to defeat that stereotype.
Now, basically, a couple of anecdotes from up here today. I was talking to Democrat Representative Gerald Nadler, and he was saying that this is just one more case where America, the American ideal of more and more rights coming to more and more people. But on the other side, the woman who is one of the main representatives of Proposition 8, she says that what the court basically did today was to insult the 17 million Californians who have voted to say that marriage is basically just for one man, one woman. Back to you, Mark.
Paul Strand at the U.S. Supreme Court. Joining us now with more is Ryan Anderson of the Heritage Foundation. He is also the co-author of the book, What is Marriage? Ryan, these rulings could have gone in so many directions. What the court did not do is to establish a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. Instead, it seemed to defer to the states, particularly in the DOMA case. Is that good news?
It is to a certain extent. What the court didn't do is redefine marriage for the whole country. The court's going to let us to continue to debate marriage, to discuss marriage, and to vote about marriage. And citizens in all 50 states remain free to do this. That's the good thing about this ruling. The bad thing is that the citizens of California have already done that. The citizens of California voted about marriage twice. And on both occasions, the citizens defined marriage as a union of a man and a woman. But the court today said they didn't have standing to defend their law. The governor of California and the attorney general of California refused to defend the law that the citizens passed when they went to the ballot boxes. And today the Supreme Court said, we're sorry, citizens, but you don't have standing. Only your governor and your attorney general would. So that's not good for democracy. And then in the Defense of Marriage Act case, the Supreme Court said that the federal government has to accept whatever the states say about marriage. That just misunderstands federalism. The states are free to pass laws about marriage for state policy and for state purposes, but the federal government has to define marriage for federal purposes, for federal policies. So it's a mixed bag of a decision, but at the end of the day, citizens remain free to pass laws that tell the truth about marriage, and we should continue doing so.
Well, there's concern that because of this ruling in the DOMA case, that the government will now have to consider overhauling references to marriage in other laws. What do you see going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question of what does the government do going forward here. And it seems to me that it should first reassert that it does have authority to make marriage policy. It shouldn't necessarily accept this as the last word about marriage. When it passes a federal law that says the word marriage, it should be able to define what it means by that word. The other thing you can do here is to decide, which of these policies really need to incorporate marriage and which ones can be produced without mentioning marriage. The federal government's now going to have to go through the 1,000 times when it references marriages and see, does it get undercut by redefining marriage, as 12 states have, to include same-sex relationships.
Now, what is the next step in the debate? You talked a little bit about this, but explain a little more. Do you see it becoming more of a state issue where the definition of marriage is defined at the state level?
Yeah, well, it's always been a state's issue, and it will continue as a state issue. The Defense of Marriage Act just defined marriage for federal purposes, but the 50 states still had to define marriage for state purposes. And that will continue. Right now, 12 states have redefined marriage. 38 states have defined marriage as a union of a man and a woman. And those states will have to continue to do so. Those laws will be challenged. The 12 states that have redefined marriage, we should try to make headway there to help those citizens understand the truth about marriage. So it'll continue playing out in all 50 states. The 12 states that have made a mistake about marriage, they're not lost forever. They can see that redefining marriage has consequences, and the consequences aren't good. And the 38 states that currently define marriage correctly, we should continue to make the arguments in those states so those citizens understand what marriage is, why marriage matters, and why redefining marriage is a bad idea.
Okay. Ryan Anderson with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be with you.
Members of Congress are as divided as the Supreme Court over the gay marriage issue. CBN's John Jessup spent the day on Capitol Hill getting reaction from the nation's leaders.
It was here on Capitol Hill nearly 17 years ago that lawmakers pushed through the Defense of Marriage Act. Sweeping majorities of the 535 lawmakers in the House and Senate approved that legislation. It only took 5 justices of the Supreme Court to overturn that law. And as you can imagine, that sparked strong opinions on both sides.
To me, this is a major pivot point. Admittedly, it's only a 5-4 decision, but it's there, it's solid. This train has left the station.
When DOMA was debated on the House floor, I spoke up against it, spoke out, because I don't think there's any room in our society for discriminating against someone because of sexual orientation.
What kind of signal do you think that sends to states when they're trying to figure out whether or not, when voters in the states are trying to figure this out?
Again, although they are legally inconsistent and logically contradictory, they are consistent in one respect, and that is ideologically.
If the courts don't understand their limited role here, then we need a federal marriage amendment to protect traditional marriage, not just for marriage and the couples, but for our children. I will introduce the federal marriage amendment perhaps later this week and call upon all my fellow Republicans who just a few years ago said they were for marriage or voted for marriage or supported those efforts in their state legislature, for them to step up and say marriage is so important, we need a marriage amendment now.
While they're on opposite sides of the debate, both sides agree that the fight over marriage is far from over. John Jessup, CBN News, reporting on Capitol Hill.
The court's decisions on marriage come as states remain split over the issue. The number of states permitting same-sex marriage has gone from 6 to 12 in the last year, but the drive to legalize it in Illinois stalled, and 30 state constitutions ban it. We're going to have full coverage of the court's rulings on CBNNews.com and on tomorrow's 700 Club. President Obama calls today's Supreme Court ruling on DOMA a victory. Before leaving for Africa, he issued a statement saying, "This ruling is a victory for couples who have long fought for equal treatment under the law, for children whose parents' marriages will now be recognized rightly as legitimate." He goes on to say how religious institutions define and consecrate marriage has always been up to those institutions. Nothing about this decision, which applies only to civil marriages, changes that. Coming up, an emotional response. Paula Deen reminds her critics of something Jesus once said. Celebrity chef Paula Deen says she's not a racist. Deen made the statement during a tearful interview on NBC's Today Show this morning. She has been plagued by controversy since admitting in a legal deposition that she had used the N-word in the past.
I've had wonderful support, and I tell you what, if there's anyone out there that has never said something that they wish they could take back, if you're out there, please pick up that stone and throw it so hard in my head that it kills me. Please, I want to meet you.
Deen has supporters including former Food Network star winner Aaron McCargo Jr., who is African American. On Facebook, he called her a friend, saying, "Paula has always been very helpful and supportive throughout my career. We are all human and we should never be quick to judge anyone." Also, author Anne Rice came to Deen's defense, writing on Facebook, "Wow, this looks like a crucifixion. I may be wrong, but aren't we becoming something of a lynch mob culture?" In other news, a sweeping new abortion bill is dead in the Texas Senate. It failed to pass before a midnight Tuesday deadline. The vote drew hundreds to the state's capital. Thousands more watched a live stream. As CBN's Charlene Israel reports, the abortion battle in the Lone Star State is symbolic of the abortion fight nationwide.
The cries from pro-choice supporters in the Texas Senate chamber drowned out Republicans attempting to vote on Texas's sweeping anti-abortion bill. Texas Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst called the crowd of nearly 400 an unruly mob and blamed them for using Occupy Wall Street tactics to disrupt the Senate from protecting unborn babies. He said the bill passed 19-10, but because of all the noise, he couldn't hear the proceedings. Senate Bill 5 restricts abortions after 20 weeks. It also puts significant restrictions on abortion, doctors, and clinics. Opponents say it could shut 37 of the 42 clinics in the state.
It is about women's health. Those parts of the bill truly were about women's health. The 20-week ban is truly about the pain of a 5-month-old baby going through an abortion.
Before the protesters erupted in the Senate gallery, Democratic Senator Wendy Davis filibustered against the bill for 11 hours.
I want to continue by reading the portion of the bill.
Abortion opponents cheered her on, arguing the laws would make it nearly impossible for a woman to get a legal abortion.
They're trying to make it very, very difficult for the women in Texas to have that choice.
Davis's filibuster was halted before the midnight deadline approached when Dewhurst ruled she had gone off topic. But then the protesters stepped in, and a time stamp on the vote showed it failed to meet its deadline. The proceedings drew thousands of online viewers as well, and even caught the attention of President Obama's official Twitter account, which tweeted out, "Something special is happening in Austin tonight." 24 states nationwide are pushing to regulate abortion clinics, causing abortion advocates to push back harder and sparking a countrywide debate. The case of Philadelphia abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell, who was sentenced to life in prison for murdering 3 babies born alive, has also focused more public attention on the issue of abortion. But Texas lawmakers may try again. Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst hinted that Governor Rick Perry may call another special session to get the bill passed, saying, quote, "It's over. It's been fun, but see you soon." Charlene Israel, CBN News.
What is happening to our country? The Supreme Court handed property owners a victory Tuesday. It said governments cannot demand unreasonable amounts of money in exchange for a building permit. As CBN News first reported earlier this year, the state of Florida declared part of the Coons' property as wetlands years after they purchased it. The Coons' offered to not develop that portion of the property. The local bureaucrats demanded the family pay up to $150,000 to upgrade other distant government-owned wetlands. When the family said no, state bureaucrats refused to give the family a building permit. Now the court ruled the bureaucrats were wrong.
Government can at times be a creeping blob, absorbing your rights. And hopefully this will at least put a halt to that.
The Coons' attorney says the court put government on notice it cannot turn the land use permitting process into an extortion machine. Up next, we'll take you to a state where the governor says he's pro-baby and how the state is helping women who want to choose life.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes now.
Many states are controlled by politicians who support abortion, but Pennsylvania is using its taxpayer dollars to give women another choice, a choice for life. And as Paul Strand reports, it's working.
25 years ago, teenager Noreen Marisic found herself pregnant and at odds with angry parents.
They were trying to force me to have an abortion, and I wasn't going to do that.
Her boyfriend didn't want her to have the baby either. Noreen received no support until she came across the folks at Genesis Center in Pittsburgh. These women gave her a temporary place to live, education so she could support herself, and encouragement that she could be a good mother.
My mom said that I would end up to be nothing, that I'd end up on the welfare.
Even today, Noreen is overwhelmed with how the two older women seen here became the surrogate mothers she desperately needed.
With all the encouragement and love, those two ladies.
With financial support, centers like Genesis can help millions of women such as Noreen say no to abortion. It's not easy, though, when pro-choice politicians and abortion providers like Planned Parenthood join forces against that effort.
Some states are so aligned with the abortion industry, they're trying to shut down pro-life pregnancy centers. Not so here in Pennsylvania.
The state uses taxpayer dollars to help the pro-life alternatives. For 17 years now, the charity Real Alternatives has been directing $5 to $6 million a year to almost 100 pro-life centers across the state. These combined efforts have helped bring Pennsylvania's abortion rate down some 7%. This success has led 14 other states to ask for help in setting up similar programs.
What I say is I'm pro-baby.
One of Real Alternatives' biggest backers, Governor Tom Corbett.
We've had 189,000 or over 189,000 women go through the program.
Corbett brings a personal connection to this fight because a pregnant woman chose adoption over abortion. His daughter and son-in-law adopted that woman's little boy.
When Liam comes to see us, he gets up on my knee, especially when it's nap time. I start rubbing his back. He goes to sleep against me. I thank God every day that young woman who decided to keep the baby and not have the baby aborted did so, because I've got this precious little fella.
The Real Alternatives program also came to the rescue of Pennsylvania mom Jamie Fair. This unemployed mother became pregnant with her fourth child just as her husband left her. Her future looked bleak, and even doctors recommended she abort.
I did have a medical issue that they felt that it wouldn't be conducive to my life if I would go ahead with the pregnancy.
Short of money, Jamie came to Tri-City Life Center looking for a free crib, but ended up getting much more. Counselors there became the encouragers and family Jamie and her children needed.
I couldn't afford diapers, I couldn't afford food. They would get toys, they would get clothes, they would get things that they needed. But most importantly, they would get the support and the love that they needed.
Vera Morelli directs Tri-City Life.
When a mother decides to carry a child, we're there every day, not only through her pregnancy, but we're there for the first 5 years of that child.
They love these women as if they were their own daughter.
Real Alternatives President Kevin Bagata says most abortions happen because women feel forced into them due to a lack of support.
There were surveys done of women who had had an abortion, and they had said if one person had helped them during the crisis pregnancy, they wouldn't have had the abortion.
After they get help from a pro-life center, 87% of women say they won't abort even if they're pressured to by boyfriends, parents, or others. That's because now the woman feels she has someone on her side.
And therefore, she's free to make the decision she wants to make and can live with the rest of her life.
24-year-old Jessica Sheldon is part of a generation where every third person has been killed by abortion.
It is kind of scary just to think of like all the people that could have been here but are not.
Jessica shares advice for pregnant young women wavering about giving their child life.
It's probably going to be really scary and you're probably going to be in shock for a while, but I mean, if you pull through with it, it's like the best thing ever.
Jessica doesn't say this because she was ever pregnant. It's because her mother is Noreen, who 25 years ago sought help from a pro-life center, then fought her family and boyfriend to keep her baby.
Some states say they're pro-choice because they back the abortion industry. It's different here in Pennsylvania. They say they're pro-choice because they're offering women real alternatives. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Want to see Israel through the eyes of Jesus? Well, there's an app for that. It's called Archetype, a reality program designed by archaeologists. All you do is hold your phone up in front of a historic site. The original structure will suddenly appear on the screen. For instance, a tourist can hold up their phone in front of the Dome of the Rock and watch it transform into the Jewish holy site of the Second Temple. Creators say they hope to develop the app for other historic sites around the world. And I hope they do. That's fascinating. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsWatch. Of course, you can email us your comments and questions at newswatch@cbn.com. Hope you'll join us next time. Take care.